Hi everyone, welcome to our podcast. Today's episode is called How Your Memory Works Inside Your Brain. We're going to talk about how memory works, why we forget things, and how you can study in a smart way. If you ever tried to remember something for a test and your mind went back, don't worry, we're not alone. By the end of the episode, you all understand what your brain is doing and how to help it learn better.
How memory works. Let's start with the basic. Memory works in three main steps: encoding, storage, and recall. First, we try to focus to encode new information. Encoding is when your brain takes in information from your eyes and ears. This is why attention matters so much. Because if you are distracted, your brain does not process the information deeply. For example, if you are studying while watching videos, your brain is trying to do things at the same time, so the information is weaker in your memory. Next, the brain works to store information. Storage means keeping information over time. Your brain stores memory by making connections between neurons. When you review something again and again, those connections become stronger. As a result, the information is easier to remember later. Sleep also helps the brain store memories because your brain organizes information when you rest. Finally, we learn to recall information. Recall is when you bring information back to your mind. This happens when you answer questions, explain ideas to a friend, or take a test. Sometimes we think we know something, however, when we try to recall all, we forget. This is normal. The good news is that practicing recall actually improves memory. For example, when you close your notes and try to remember the main ideas, your brain gets stronger at remembering them next time.
Why we forget. Now let's talk about forgetting. Forgetting does not mean you are bad at studying. Sometimes the brain forgets information because it was not in condition well. Maybe you didn't focus, or maybe the information was not meaningful to you. Also, we forget when we don't review. The brain is effect, so it removes information it thinks you don't need. As a result, if you don't use information, it becomes harder to recall later. Another reason we forgot interfaces. This means new information can mix with old information, however, can reduce interface by organization your notes and studying one topic at a time. It's a good idea to learn organize your study time so your brain can process information clearly.
Words with multiple meanings. Let's explore some words related to memory that have multiple meanings. The word store can mean to keep information in your brain, but store can also mean a place where you buy things. When we say the brain stores memory, we mean it keeps information inside. The word record also has two meanings. You can record information in your memory, however, you can also record a video or audio. For example, when you record a podcast, you are making an audio file. When your brain records a memory, it is creating a mental copy. The word focus has more than one meaning too. You can focus your mind on a topic, and a camera can focus on an object. When you focus your attention while studying, your brain processes information more deeply. As a result, focused study learns to stronger memories. The word process can mean how the brain works with information, and it can also mean a series of steps to complete something. For example, studying is a process you read, review, and practice it, recall.
Study tips connected to the brain science. Notes. Now let's talk about how study tips that are connected to how the brain works. First, you should try to review your notes a little every day because spaces practice helps your brain store information in long-term memory. Something is studying a little bit over several days. It's better than study all night one day. This work so your brain has time to study the connection better neurons. Secondly, it's a good idea to learn to test yourself. Self-testing is a powerful because it forces your brain to practice recall. You can cover your notes and ask questions. As a result, your memory becomes stronger every if you make a mistake at first. Try 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 to connect new information to things you already know. This helps the brain store information more easily because it creates meaningful links. For example, if you connect a new word to a personal experience, you are more likely to remember it. For you should try to explain what you learn to something else. Teaching forces you to organize your thoughts so you understand the topic better. However, if you can explain it clearly, that's a sign you need to review more. Finally, it's a good idea to learn to take a short breaks. The brain gets tired because attentions need energy. As a result, short breaks help you focus better when you return to study.
Let's talk about one popular study method, flashcards. One pro of flashcards is that they help you practice recall. You look at the questions, try to remember the answer, and then check. This is great because recall strengthens memory. Another pro is that flashcards help you focus on small pieces of information, so they are useful for vocabulary or definitions. However, flashcards also have cons. One con is that they can learn to memorization without understanding. You might remember a definition but know how to use it. Another is that flashcards can feel boring, so some students lose motivation. As a result, flashcards work best when you combine them with examples, explanation, or practice problems.
How to build better studied habits. Let's connect everything. Memory improves when you try to focus, review often, and practice it recall. You should try to plan short study sessions during the week because constantly helps your brain store more information. It's a good idea to learn to create a study routine that fits your life. However, remember to be flexible. If one method doesn't work, try another. As a result, you will find that helps your brain learn better. Before we finish, here is a quickly remember. You should try to study a little bit every day. It's a good idea to learn to yourself and try to connect every information to what you already know. because your brain learns talk, echoing, store, and recall. Smart studying habits can really change how well you remember things. Thanks for listening to today's episode, How Memory Works Inside Your Brain. See you next time, and good luck with studying.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of How Memory Works Inside Your Brain. See you next time and good luck with your studying.